So yes, we are recording, and we do upload all of these presentations to the portal on the website. In case you missed any previous ones or can't make this one and want to share it, it is there. So just noted. So welcome back, or welcome for the first time to all of you on the call today to Farm to School BC's School Garden Mentorship Program. This is the last one of the year, so this is the 10th in our series of sessions that we've been all coming together to share and learn from one another. This session will be on winterizing your garden and planning. And just so you know, we do plan to host this again next year. We're going to spend some time in the off season tweaking it, trying to improve it, get some feedback from all y'all, and we're going to talk about that in a little bit. So just in case you just joined, we are recording, just FYI. So our presenters today are myself and Addie, and we'd like to acknowledge that we are presenting from the traditional, ancestral, and ceded territory of the Lekwungen peoples, including Songhees and Esquimalt nations. So we're both based just outside of Victoria. If you'd like to share your traditional territory in the chat box, please do feel free. It's always great to see the different regions and territories that everybody is joining from. So yeah, just a little bit about myself and Addie. We've both been with Farm to School BC for a number of years, Addie being here the longest of anyone on the staff. I'm the provincial manager, 12 years experience working school garden programs, and Addie is a food literacy advisor. She's also an elementary school teacher and an avid market gardener. We are also joined today with Sonia Rokosh, who's going to be helping out moving forward next year with the mentorship program. And so she's going to speak a little bit as well. And she's the Kamloops regional animator. So just a little bit about Farm to School BC. It's a program that brings healthy, local, and sustainable food into schools and communities across British Columbia. And here's kind of our sort of pillars that we strive for in our programming: hands-on learning, healthy local food, and school community connectedness. We are a program of the Public Health Association of BC, and we are supported by the province of British Columbia. Across the province, we support the entire province, in particular with our grants and our resource creation that you can find on our website, including webinars such as this. But we also have geographic locations called regional hubs in which animators reside and support schools with school districts within those regions. And so this is just a map to show you those areas. And in case you were unaware and you fall into one of these school districts, that means that you have an animator. And that's the 8 animators that you see on the right-hand side there that represent each of those regions. And then it just shows a couple of our provincial team over here on the left side. You can find that information in your contacts on our website if you're looking to reach out and make a connection. So our agenda for today, we're very happy to have a guest speaker, Natalie Leframboise, who will be coming here to give us some information on Teach Food First, a really terrific resource that's been created just in the past year. The session will focus on winterizing your garden, grant reporting, season reflection, a little bit on fundraising, kind of more in general. And we'll have some breakout rooms at the end, which will be a discussion about where you're going, kind of with your project in the off season, what you plan to do. And then there'll be some closing after that. So I will pass it on over to Addie to speak about our school garden timeline that we've been kind of coming back to over the course of this year. Addie, all yours.
Thanks. I just love reading where everybody is joining us today from, so thank you for sharing. We're at the end of the gardening season. Congratulations, you made it, hooray. I have been visiting a couple school gardens lately and the teachers are exhausted, so we're gonna do a little check-in in a minute to see how you are showing up today. But the hard work is over. You get a couple months off now. I mean, now you're just in the thick of teaching, but the garden is starting to slow down. So kind of moving from left to right. The top, your committee is working through your crop storage plan, preparing it for winter. And then in the bottom right, where we have our kind of outline there in terms of the garden, you're moving things, you're finishing your harvest, preparing the things for winter, maybe doing some cooking, freezing of things so you can use them for your winter. Every garden's going to look a little bit different, but you're kind of at the end of the garden phase, which always feels a little weird in the teaching cycle. So you did it. Congratulations. So we just want to do a little bit of a check-in today. Think about, just take 30 seconds or so and think about how you are showing up today in 2 words. And yeah, you can share it in the chat. I always feel like I like to do more than a 1-word answer because there's lots of different feelings, and I'm noticing lots of people kind of feel good and tired and slow and nervous. These are awesome. Thank you. So Ted, yes, for sure. Drought stressed. It is dry out there. It feels really, really odd. Who wants to share? Alex is feeling great. Alex, do you want to tell us why you're feeling so great? No, maybe not. Tessa, how are you feeling? Slow moving. What's going on with you?
Feeling good over here, but just moving at toddler pace all day and now sitting down and just appreciating the slowness of coming together for this time.
Yeah. Yeah. The fall feels like kind of a natural, like slowing down too. Alex, I see you unmuted yourself. Do you want to share a little bit?
I didn't notice that it was off, and I thought, why isn't anybody answering me?
No worries.
No, like I said, we've been down in the garden, did a final weed, cleaning out the old beaten up greenhouse, brought our young tomato plants in, and now we're getting planning to start seeding, start sprouting again, so we can try some indoor gardening with the daycare to right up to the 6th, 7th.
Oh, cool.
Yeah,
well, I'd love that you still have energy.
Hydroponics going in the pop bottles and stuff.
Oh, cool. That sounds fun.
Yeah. Really.
Yeah, for sure. What about T. Dean? Tired, happy.
Hi, my first name's Tamara.
Hi, Tamara.
Tired because actually this time of year is exhausting, starting everything up in school and getting routines established and whatnot. But I'm happy because things are going well. And in spite of the drought, the weather has been enjoyable. And I've got a great student teacher working with me. And
yay.
We have a program starting up next year that I have initiated. I'm very excited about it. We're going to have the school garden become a regular classroom. And
oh, cool. Did you get a prep teacher?
I am the prep teacher for that.
You are, yay.
I am going to be, yes. I am going to be Vancouver's Megan Zinni.
Yay, amazing. It makes all the difference when you have like teacher time dedicated to it.
I am so hyped about it.
Wow. Well, we'd love to pick your brain. what you're going to be doing. Awesome.
Tamara,
Okay.
there's just a question there. What school are you at?
I'm at Cunningham Elementary in Vancouver.
Great. Well, Marin is your girl, so maybe she can help you out.
Awesome.
Oh, that's so awesome. Okay, Nicole, let's see. District permission to build a garden is pending. That's always nerve-wracking. Do you want to share a couple words about that?
We have a patio garden that I built basically with the kids in March. So this is our first winter season and we're applying to expand into the schoolyard. But it requires an application to the district for permission and they only approve 5 per year. So
Wow.
Which is
It's
really
amazing. Every district is so different.
they don't spend any money on it. They literally just give you permission. So I don't know why they restricted to 5 per year, but that's how it is.
Well, maybe Angelina can help make sure that your application is really good.
Yeah, I'll use all the help I can get. It's due this Friday.
Oh, that's always super fun. Awesome. Well, thank you everyone for sharing. That was it's nice to see who's on the call and how people are checking in today. Awesome. Thank you. So we're going to move into our presentation. Marcus, did you kind of want to do an intro here?
Sure. Yes, absolutely. So we're very happy to have Natalie Leframboise joining us today to walk through this really wonderful resource called Teach Food First. Natalie is a registered dietitian and manager in the Office of Nutrition Policy and Promotion at the BC Ministry of Health. She's a University of Guelph grad with a Master of Science in Foods and Nutrition from Western, where she also completed her dietetic training. Since 2010, Natalie has worked in population and public health at the ministry, providing leadership for several nutrition policy files, including the trans fat regulation, Feed BC and healthcare, and sodium and sugary drink reduction. Natalie is also responsible for school-age nutrition policies, programs, and resources, including Teach Food First and the guidelines for food and beverages in BC schools. With gratitude, Natalie joins us, lives and works on the traditional territories of the Algonquin peoples of the Esquimalt and Songhees nations. So Natalie is going to give a little presentation that she shared some slides with us here, and then we'll be able to take about 5 minutes of questions at the end. So I know that I saw her join the meeting, so I will pass it over. And Natalie, you just let me know if you want me to move forward in any of the slides as we go along. So I'll pass it over to Natalie.
Thanks, Marcus, for that lovely introduction and for the opportunity to join your meeting today and talk about Teach Food First. So we could probably go to the next slide. So between 2020 and 2021, we developed Teach Food First. And it was really to respond to the need for food and nutrition curriculum resources, given that we had a new Canada's Food Guide released in 2019. And so this was a collaborative effort between the ministry and my colleagues, my public health dietitian colleagues from all 7 health authorities in the province. We also had a small group of teachers that helped to pilot test the resources as we developed them. And finally, we were really fortunate to have a group of knowledge keepers from Vancouver Island to help us develop the traditional food lessons. Next slide. So the Teach Food First Toolkit is essentially a website that houses tips, resources, lesson plans for exploring Canada's Food Guide in the classroom. Our goal with providing this toolkit is to encourage positive food experiences. So the name itself really speaks to what we want the focus to be on, which is teaching about food and exploring all the wonderful aspects of food without getting into nutrition, especially at this early age. We were also intentional about ensuring the lessons connect to the BC curriculum. So currently Teach Food First is only for grades K to 8, but we would like to expand and have resources that also would be appropriate for the high school setting. Next slide. So the toolkit is set up with 3 distinct sections. So the first part is what we call our guiding principles for educators. This section is really to help orient educators to this new approach we are using and promoting in BC around food and nutrition education. So historically, we have created resources that do attempt to teach nutrition. For example, like how much sugar is in pop or in a sugar cube, how to read a food label. But what we've learned is that children aren't really ready to understand these concepts, even adults struggle. And what can happen is that it can actually lead to a rigid way of thinking when it comes to food. Next slide. So for example, our guiding principle 2, it's around considering the roles adults and children have in feeding and eating. And this section really dives into Ellen Satter's theory on the division of responsibility for feeding and eating. So where adults are responsible for the what, when, and where, children are responsible for how much and whether to eat. So we want to stop teaching young children the adult role in the division of responsibility. Children are not the main decision makers when it comes to buying and preparing food. And we also know that adults make food decisions based on many factors, including budget, accessibility of food, cultural preferences, etc. So we want to be neutral about that foods that parents and caregivers pack for student lunches and snacks. Next slide. So part 2 of the toolkit is where you'll find the actual lessons and activities. And when we created the toolkit, we were very intentional about not reinventing the wheel, so to speak. So we wanted to be able to link to existing resources that aligned with the Teach Food First approach. But after we did an inventory of the lessons that were already out there, we identified the gaps, and we had 10 new lesson plans developed that are actually branded Teach Food First. All the lessons, including those developed by Teach Food First and those that we've linked out to, are sortable by grade level and by subject. So for example, it might be hard to see on the slide here, but what's on the slide is all the lessons that correspond with the subject around eating together. Next slide. And then part 3 is where you'll find some questions and answers around interpreting Canada's Food Guide, as well as one of our most popular resources, which is suggested answers to common food and nutrition questions from students. Next slide. So for example, how do you respond when a student asks, but my aunt says that milk or meat is unhealthy and bad for you? So the advice here is to acknowledge that people eat different foods for a lot of reasons. And what's important is that we each have different foods available to use that we like and can give us what we need to grow, learn, and play. Next slide. So one of the exciting opportunities that we had while we were developing Teach Food First and wanting to ensure that our resources aligned with the BC curriculum was the opportunity to work with our education ministry colleagues to adapt the physical health education curriculum elaborations. So we can't change curriculum right now because we're not within the cycle that curriculum is being updated. But we could change the elaborations, which really provide educators with prompts on how to meet the curriculum. Next slide. So this slide can give you an example of what the old elaborations used to be for K-2 and how we were able to change them. So for example, asking a kindergarten student what types of choices you can make for your health and well-being does not align with our approach. It's not age appropriate. And so we were able to change this to examples of ways to explore a variety of foods by color, by texture, by shape, by size, etc. So we've been able to do this for all the elaborations related to food and nutrition for K to 8. Next slide. So if you want to access the toolkit, it's very easy. You just go to www.teachfoodfirst.ca. And that is the end of my presentation, but I'm happy to answer any questions that folks might have.
Thanks, Natalie. I have a question.
Sure.
When I am curious, do you know when the next cycle of curriculum development is? Because wasn't it just like 2.5 years ago or 3 years ago?
I want to, yeah. So because it takes so long, we
Yeah.
probably will start to see movement towards the process to update the curriculum within, I think, around the next year or two. So we are still a little ways away from seeing a new set of curriculum, but because it takes such a long time, you know, our eye is on, you know, being involved when we can, when that opportunity comes about.
Thank you. And I see Nicole has a question.
Would a number of those activities have explicit connections to the BC curriculum as it stands?
There's
Like,
each,
with-
yeah.
It shows like which curricular area, which competencies it corresponds to.
For the Teach Food First branded ones, we made a point of doing that. I can't say for the ones like for BC Dairy or for Farm to School that we link out to whether or not they've done that, but for Teach Food First, they should have that in there.
And I also see Dorota, is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I have a question. Is the Teach Food First, it's like a food policy for school districts?
Sorry, my phone's dinging. I didn't quite catch that. What was your question?
I'm just asking if the Teach Food First is like a policy for school districts.
No, it's not a policy. No, it's just a resource that educators can use to help support teaching the physical health education. If you're wanting to explore food and nutrition in your classroom, Canada's Food Guide, it's really just a resource that's available to you that was provincially developed.
Mm-hmm. And have you heard any feedback from the school district about this resource?
I've heard, I mean, we do collect metrics, so we do know that folks are going to the site and they're downloading the resources. Interesting, I feel like I hear more from my health colleagues within the province, and also Ontario has now reached out to us to ask us to adapt the resource. So there's definitely a lot of accolades within my profession, but definitely wanting to get more of the word out to educators that this resource is available, and hopefully that will increase uptake, and appreciate this opportunity that Mark has had for me to come and speak to all of you about it.
Thank you.
Natalie, I just wanted to say the teaching guidelines I find really, really helpful. That it's amazing how like I walk into a room now and it's just like shaming on lunch, shaming on snacks. Like it's so pervasive and it's really hard to shift the culture. So it's really nice to have like I wonder if we should like print a poster out and put it in the staff bulletin board, like in the photocopy room or something, just to like, it's something that you need to see over and over. And like, even with my own kids, I'm like, nope, okay, it's not my job to, you know, it's all of these like best practices things. So it's really nice to have a space to go that, you know, dietitians have made sure that all the resources are, you know, kind of aligned with the best practices for how to talk about food, because it's really tricky and we all learn.
We've heard, I remember hearing from educators when we were pilot testing, there was almost like a sense of relief that they didn't actually need to talk about, like we're saying, stop talking about nutrition, like, you know, keep it really positive, and just you know, food is so wonderful to explore. There's so many wonderful aspects of it. And there was this, kind of sense of relief. So yeah, thanks, Addie. It is really our goal to try to change the approach and practice around this, but it's going to take time. We're unraveling some of the things that, are my profession, put out there. And so we're slowly, hopefully introducing a new approach to teaching food and nutrition in the classroom.
A while.
Yeah. Marcus.
Yeah, I was wondering if you could just speak a little bit more on sort of, I like a lot of the language that of the Teach Food First that's used, which really focuses on encouraging kind of positive food experiences, and then in and around the benefits of eating together. And I know as myself, like having managed gardens in the past and seeing how when kids are in a setting in the garden, and they'll be more likely to try things because they see their peers trying. And it's, yeah, I was just wondering if you could speak a little bit more about why there is more of that focus on the encouraging of the positive food experiences and eating together.
Yeah, and a lot of that is in alignment with our new food guide that came out in 2019 that really emphasized this, that it's more than just what we eat, right? It is that, food is so connected to celebration and to family and to connectiveness with each other. But I also agree with you, Marcus, that there is this opportunity to almost see your peers eating something or trying something, but also in a pressure-free way, that's still up to you whether or not you want to try that particular vegetable or not. That we're not pushing that. It's just the opportunity is there. And I think there's even been studies that, we release endorphins, like when we actually eat with other people, like we're just happier as a population when we're actually enjoying meals with one another. And so I think it's a really lovely thing to focus on when it comes to teaching food and nutrition, is that celebratory connectiveness with each other when it comes to food.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Do we have any other questions out there in the room before moving on? Carrie, yes, please.
I just wanted to check in about this because I'm looking at the resource as you're talking. I'm not seeing anything available in French, and I'm just wondering if you could speak to that.
Yeah, so that was definitely a request that we had, and was something that we were working towards. It's still something that I would like to accomplish. Honestly, it was a losing steam kind of situation where there's only so many of us and so many files that we are leading here in the province, but appreciate, Carrie, you bringing that up. It is something that we've wanted to be able to do, as at the very least be able to translate the Teach Food First lessons into French, as well as the guiding principles. So thank you. And I will definitely look at whether that is something that's feasible in the future. I know I am working with Ontario, who wants to adapt some of our resources. And in order to do that, I don't know if anybody's watched the video, but we have this video that kind of talks about Teach Food. So it's very short, it's like 3 minutes long. So we are in the works of getting that piece translated. So there is movement. It's just going to take a little bit of time, but that will be translated as the first step.
I just wanted to pull it up real quick. I know that we're almost at our point in time to move on to the next section, but I just, I liked how when you come to the lesson plans, and I know there's many teachers on this call, you can actually put in the grade level category and any keywords, and there's some really great ones in here, and the traditional foods of the different lessons, and it's broken down. So I just wanted to kind of point that out while we were on the call here, get a little live action into the website.
Thanks, Marcus.
Yeah, any last questions? Maybe we have time for one more questions or comments, and then otherwise we will move along with our session today.
And also please feel free to reach out to me. I think Marcus can share my contact details, but if you are using the resources and you want to provide feedback, I would love to hear from you. So please don't be shy. You've got my email contact, so reach out to me. And yeah, I do want to continue to improve and add to the resource, but sometimes I'm not sure what direction to go. And so if I hear from educators directly, that's really, really helpful.
Yeah, are you the contact person? Are you the contact person then, Natalie, or would that be like our regional dietitian in some way?
If you reach out to your regional dietitian, they're just going to reach out to me. So you might as well skip that
great.
stuff and Come
Right.
up, yeah, approach me directly.
Here's the contact right here. It was on the final slide.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, well, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Natalie. We really appreciate you joining us and filling us in on this really great resource. Hopefully it's gonna be something that teachers can dig into over this winter. Yeah, thanks again.
Thank you, everyone. I really appreciate your time today.
Okay, we will now move back into our session. Let me get my screen shared here. Okay, just give me 1 second.
So just as we move into the next section, my goodness, I was like session, no, still the same one. We are the next part of the webinar. We're gonna be talking about the garden and what to do in the garden, what you should be looking out for, what things are coming down in your to-do list. I'm sure you love lists as much as I do. And then the next section will be about our committee and what to be thinking about kind of for the end of the year. So in your garden, things are closing down, you're cleaning it up, we're getting ready for winter. Even on a day like today, when it feels like winter is far away, it's time to start cleaning up. Thank goodness. So for October, you're going to be clearing out your plants, disposing of debris. It depends. Every garden is different. So if you have composting on site, awesome. But if you're just taking all of your sunflower heads and plopping them in the compost, they don't compost. You have to break them up. But good news, you have 22 little humans who really like to rip things when you let them. So make sure if you are composting on your site, you're breaking it up into smaller pieces, or considering if you can drop it off somewhere else. Maybe you don't want to deal with sunflower stalks. They take a really long time, or corn, things like that that are going to take a while to break down. Also thinking about diseases like tomatoes. You can get your tomato plants composted off-site. There's a lot of diseases that can stay within the plants that you don't really want in your soil for next year. So often it's really easy. I mean, more work maybe, but you can get a trailer or something and just take it off-site if there's a yard waste disposal in your community. Those are for the bigger pieces, but the small leafy plants, like if you have lettuces, you don't want to eat lettuce anymore because it's the end of October, we're done. You can just chop it and drop them. So you can leave the roots growing in the soil. That's really going to help with all the spaces and the bugs and everything. And it's also going to cover the soil, which we don't want to leave bare. I know it might look prettier, but soil does not like to be bare. So everything you are doing right now is kind of clearing out the top part of your soil, but making sure it's covered. You can be using leaves, compost, straw, composted manures, green manure, which we'll talk about on the next slide. You can see a picture of all of this beautiful, healthy soil in the picture here. It's from a farmer that I was working with just north of Kamloops in Simk, and he does lots of ryegrass and covers everything with straw. And you can see the mycorrhizal networks and the fungus, and it's just covered with worms. So you are helping your soil with getting ready for next year, and you don't want it to die over the winter. It'll freeze. And we want to keep it warm and alive and all those things kind of growing. And there's also a ton of good resources out there. So the Compost Education Center, we have a link on our portal page. They have awesome fact sheets, which Sonia pointed out to me. This is a screenshot of one of them about mulching. So you can do a whole lesson about mulching. It's really fun to do with everybody. There's also Spec has a lot of garden lessons, also linked on the portal page. This is a little screenshot from it. You can do some soil testing. So do some science lesson right now with your students. Do something now and you can compare it to the spring. What's in your soil? Do we need to add more clay or sand or silt? Like, let's think about the health of your soil, because that is going to make all the difference next year. So when you are gardening on school property or needing to consider the look of your garden, always think about your soil. That is what I've learned in the last year. It all comes down to your soil. But if anybody has any tips, please feel free to unmute yourself or share in the chat. I know we've got some solid gardeners here. All right, next slide. So green manures are really, it's a little trickier, but it can do a lot of good in your garden. So you can be using crops like winter rye, peas, alfalfa, vetch. There's lots of different things you can grow. Again, this is the farmer in Sim. So in his rows, he's growing rye. And that is the color of his soil. Like, it's just amazing. You can also be planting things between your rows that will, like vetch and clover. Awesome. That's cool, Nicole. Scarlet clover as a living mulch. Fava beans, for sure. Anything that's got legumes, it's adding nitrogen back into the soil. It's also going to be controlling your weeds for the springtime and keep the soil from washing away in the rains and snow. And you want to make sure though that it doesn't get too high, because it's really hard to get back into the soil. And if you're doing no-till methods, and you know, if you're doing that in garden boxes, you can just kind of chop it and flip it over in the spring. Martine is wondering, we don't have a lot of leaves on our property. If it's a bad thing to ask families to donate bags of raked leaves from other properties, is there a risk of disease? I'm not sure. Tessa or Rowan, Marcus, do you have any ideas about that? Oh, powdery mildew. Yeah,
I'm happy to jump in if you want.
great.
I am a huge believer in leaves on gardens. And I have talked to a few schools in the region that I work in that do leaf drives and get parents to bring leaves to the gardens, and they have a really heavy mulch on their beds, as well as they use wire cages to stack all the leaves in a kind of compost system. And then by the spring, those leaves have broken down and they add that as a compost. In terms of diseases, powdery mildew is everywhere. And so I don't think bringing leaves in will increase your chance of powdery mildew in your garden. There's other factors like moisture that contribute to it. So I wouldn't worry about that. I guess working with kids, just wanting to make sure the leaves are clean and safe. Like I have done some just projects with kids raking leaves, and there's always a concern about what sort of garbage might be in that. And depending on what neighborhood your school is in, just being aware of safety around collecting leaves that outside of the schoolyard. I don't know if that answers the question.
Tessa, have you found like how deep things need to be on the soil, like when they do leaf drives?
I find it really depends on time of year. Like if you're getting wet leaves that have already broken down, you don't need as much. Whereas the dry leaves, it's amazing. You can stack a bunch of dry leaves on your garden bed and the wind blows and gets rid of them, or it rains and all of a sudden you realize you don't have as much. So it really depends on how much the leaves are decomposed. But I find more the better, because it'll really kill all the weeds. And then in the spring, if there's still leaves remaining, I just pull them back and use them in other areas of the garden where there's already established plants, and just clear off the area for the seeding. But I think the more the better, in my my opinion. But also I live on the West Coast with a lot of rain, so things probably decompose differently than it might be in other areas of the province too.
Cool. Rowan, do you have something to add?
Yeah, I was just going to say, Tessa already made the good point about like the garbage within the leaves, because you can often find surprises. But also depending on what the screening you want for what you're putting in your garden, also potentially checking in on sprays that may have been used on the leaves. So yeah, if you're getting them from anybody that's willing to drop them off, it might just be something you're interested in considering as well. And then depending on what community you live in, I'm here in the territory of the Clayton in Prince George, BC, and there's an organization called REAPS, for example, that already kind of does that. They offer like drop all your leaves off at our location, and then kind of as a pickup spot that can support that as well. So there might be organizations like that in your community where you can go access them as well.
Cool. I love, we can have bottle drives at schools for fundraisers and leaf drives for the garden. Awesome. Thank you for those. So there's also some equipment work that you need to be doing this time of year. It's not my favorite thing, but it's some people's gym. but my tools have rusted shut. So don't do what I do. Make sure you're cleaning your tools. This is a really nice time of year to be inside. This is a really important project. ADST, you're taking care of your equipment, sharpening any tools. Maybe you do that on your own. Making sure things are labeled, they're clean before they're stored away for the winter, they're dry. Your irrigation, you want to make sure that hopefully, well, lots of the province by now, you've probably like blasted out the water from the irrigation, but you don't want it to freeze and break everything, because we've all done that once and we won't do it again. And also you're thinking about your seeds. So in January, February, you're going to be doing your seed orders if you are starting things from seed. So do an inventory right now. You're going to be collecting maybe seeds from your garden, thinking about where it's going to be stored that's cool and dry. Ziploc bags work really well. Paper bags do as well. You want to be keeping them away from the light. And if you make your inventory list now, your January, February self will thank you very much for your organization. So think about your seeds too. Awesome. And garlic, if you are not already planting garlic in your school garden, it is amazing. And it's also like $16 a pound right now. So we have our crop cards about how to grow garlic. So you can plant this right now. You want to make sure you're planting the cloves. You can use the crop cards to help your students figure out how to plant them, getting your spacing right, and the direction, because you don't want to have it upside down. And then mulch right on top of it. So it's a really nice time of year to do garlic. So you'll save money, and you harvest it in July. Yep. So it is kind of a summer thing for harvesting, but it's pretty straightforward. So you'll have to think about that when you are planting it. But it is a really nice crop to have in your school garden.
I just see a question about, should we water only sparingly for garlic? And I personally have had mixed experience, but I don't know if any other farm folk want to speak to that.
I don't think I've ever watered garlic.
Yeah,
Rowan
yeah,
and
I
Tessa,
don't.
what about you two?
I have white rot, which is a garlic disease, so I haven't grown it for years. But in other places I've grown it, I've had it on your irrigation. I just pull it so it has enough time to cure before it's ready to harvest.
Yeah, definitely. Only ever water it if it's like extremely hot and dry. But usually, yeah, it's pretty tough.
Awesome. So that's kind of a wrap up of the garden. Thank you, everybody. I haven't been looking at the chat so much, so I appreciate that. We can share out some of the resources that are shared on our portal page. So Sonia is going to move into our committee and what we're going to be doing in your committee. So working with your people, not just your plants.
Yeah, and I'm actually going to probably save, like, hold on. Hi, my name's Sonia, and I love to reflect. So I am talking about the slides on reflection, and I thought, like, to honor that process and not feel rushed, I'm actually going to save a little bit of like this chat component to the breakout rooms, Addie and Marcus. So I just wanted, like, I just have 2 slides here, and this first one just points out that we essentially have a worksheet on the portal page for everyone to access, and it's just to have some guided reflection for your garden committee at your own schools, and you can adapt it as you'd like, but really sometimes think when we rush through the process just to make the next to-do list without that reflection, sometimes like that juicy learning and like that really big brain expansion can be lost. So come join me in a breakout room if you want to talk about juicy things, maybe even some vulnerable things, like, why did all these people sign up and no one showed up? Is it me? Is it you? Is it the garden? What happened? And I'm referring to the committee. Or to share your successes and like what really worked well and how you can kind of take some of that momentum and move forward going into the next year. So Marcus, there's one more slide. You can hop to that if you want. But yeah, so leading up to this next spring, Addie mentioned like you want to take care of your equipment and you also want to do a bit of an inventory there. I had a note to think about this process before spring as a bit of an audit. So sit with all of this effort that you've put in over the year and think about the areas that you need to reassess and need to think of either enhancing or decreasing some kind of capacity. So there's also just a little reminder that we have resources on the portal page and you can access those all the time. And I believe Addie is not password secured anymore. Is that right? Let everyone in.
It's open.
It's open.
We didn't put anything scandalous on the page. We made sure.
Okay, but I'm gonna just quickly hand it over to Marcus then, but just come join me if you want to just talk and be cozy, and if you have a cup of tea. That's the kind of environment I'm hoping for the reflection breakout room.
Thanks, Sonia. Yeah, and I just wanted to point out that this season reflection outline Sonia was working on, it really kind of goes like in tandem with a lot of those early documents that if you were there at the beginning of mentorship program when we were focusing a lot on the committee and how to host good meetings and kind of get buy-in from your fellow teachers, et cetera. This kind of is like sort of the bookend to that in terms of documents. So. Okay, so just a little bit on fundraising, really just possibilities of what to do kind of in the off season. A lot of grants come out around this time too, so this is a great opportunity to look for funding. As Sonia had just mentioned, having that maybe final year-end meeting with everyone asking, do we have all the tools that we started the year with? Do we need to replace some? Do we need more compost? Like, how are we feeling about how we operated on last year's budget? And what might that look like for the coming year? So it's a great time to come together and then, kind of start looking as a team and drafting some applications or doing some just simple fundraising. And just reaching out to your community, letting them know maybe some of your needs are just tools or seeds, and you might find that right in your community. You don't have to go look for funds per se. So just also to mention, Farm to School BC, our grants are now open and they're going to be open until November 13th. We have the 2 grants here that are available. If you have received our grant in the past, then progress reports will be coming up soon. I'll be reaching out to everybody about that. And if your grant cycle is at the point of a final report, that is mandatory for kind of moving forward with the next application. So if there is any confusion that you have and you were looking to apply, let's say you were funded last year and you'd like to apply again this year, feel free to reach out and I can let you know. It's at the grants coordinator at farmtoschoolbc.ca. It's on the website there if you go to the grants page. So. This Thursday, we will be having a grant writing workshop. So if you are interested in one of our grants, come join us for this session. It'll be happening after school. We'll talk about our program. We'll talk about best tips for writing grants. What are some of the expectations and different ideas? So yeah, that'll be happening this week. You can sign up if you go to our webpage, there's a link right there on the front part of the page where you can sign up for free via Eventbrite. As mentioned, there is a lot of different grants that are kind of coming up, and this is just a few we threw together that could be useful to you to take a peek on. As always, we do put our presentation up in the portal. So if you're seeing these right now and you're like, what are those? Go to the portal and you can find them after. So now I will pass it back over to Addie. We're going to have a little breakout group discussions to kind of wrap up our year and ask ourselves, kind of what are the next steps?
Awesome, thank you. So I'm going to open up the rooms right now. We're going to have 10 minutes to connect with each other. There's 2 rooms. So just scroll down and choose if you'd like to have a conversation more about the garden and what you're going to be doing this time of year, or if you'd like to have a conversation with Sonia more about the committee and how you need to go have those reflections. I'm going to say.
Okay, so just give me a second here to pull up the a presentation.
So just while Marcus is doing that, we would like to do a bit of a, we love sharing here and reflecting, just as a bit of a checkout. So when you were in the thick of it and things were really hard and your water stopped working and everything cooked over the summer, or the kids were really frustrating when you got out in the garden, whatever was going, what really motivated you to keep going? Like, what was your phrase or your, I'm not going to try to speak French, but like your raison d'etre, is that what it is, Carrie? Okay, ish. I've taught French more than I should have, probably. What keeps you going? Why do you do this work? Why do you show up? Maren, stop laughing at me. You can think about it to yourself, but write it in the chat, please.
Can I share mine out loud, Addie?
Great.
It's just in our own backyard. I live with a very picky eater, and he really loves carrots though. So we grew carrots and we tried like the tricolor ones. And I was really nervous that like the purple and the yellows wouldn't like really jive because it's like there's some pretty picky preferences. But sure enough, I was like, wow, we grew these. Let's try these. Oh my God, it's a rainbow of explosions. And I mean, a little animated, but yeah, I think there's just that connectivity piece that like you see when kids grow their own food and then they're even just willing to try something different.
That's awesome. AMC, you need to tell us why you like to make kids cry. Oh, you're muted. Hang on. You sound like you're giving such a great, you're still muted. Thank you.
No, I don't really like to make them cry, but I like to make them understand that, like, especially particularly every part of the garden, I kept emphasizing, this is not just for us. This is for the entire community, because the garden hadn't been touched, from my understanding, for 17 years. And it was an absolute nightmare. But these guys, my 6-7s, they dug and pulled and cut and chopped and mowed, and we composted, and yeah, they worked really, really hard, and they bitterly complained about it. But when they started seeing the things that grows, they were like, oh, well, that's pretty cool. You know, and then they were in there in the summertime and they had their grannies picking peas and beans and stuff like that. So they understood. It sometimes is a hard way to do it, but they will understand. And yeah, I do like to make them cry.
Awesome. The sheer joy on children's faces. Oh, thank you, Ted. That's so nice. Hattie wants to learn all of the things. We might have time for some highlights, actually. What do you think, Marcus? You're the time. You keep me on track.
Yeah, I think maybe on the other end of the survey, just as people log off, I'd love to be able to capture people before they go. So maybe after those slides.
Okay, sounds good. When they're learning, yes, Sarah, when they don't really think they are, they're like, is this science? When are we doing science? And you're like, we're doing it. The wide-eyed students, when they learn or love the food they eat, yes. Oh, stevia, it's so weird, isn't it? Getting them to eat funny things. Hot peppers.
I agree with Yang saying there about parents recounting experiences in the garden. That's been some of the most meaningful stuff that I've had when I was more closely engaged with gardens, having them come and tell me that the student has now come home and built their own garden box in the backyard, and like they're doing their own thing. That's really amazing.
Especially the ones who are kind of quiet and you don't really know if they like it or not, and then you hear that they are. That's pretty cool. Oh, Nicole, you have a seed library. That's so fun. Awesome. Well, thank you. That's really lovely. All right, so we want to hear what you all think. We are going to be sending out a survey just as a reflection of our whole mentorship program. It'll be kind of a multiple choice, 5 to 10 minutes. It's not super onerous. And if you complete it, then you get entered into a draw prize. And the prize is going to be a 1-hour Zoom consultation with Farm to School BC staff. So we can check in and see how you're doing and support you in any way that we can. So we'll send this, we'll kind of like blast it out through our listserv and anybody who's attended a meeting. We are also, if you have a ton of feedback, we are also going to be running some focus groups. So if you attended a lot of the sessions and you have some ideas about how we can improve this for next year, we've never done this before. This is a totally brand new program. We've run it for 10 straight months. And we would like to make it even better for next year. So we're going to be running a focus group November 1st and 3rd, the Tuesday and the Thursday, right after school, the same times, or no, at 3:30. So 3:30 to 4:15-ish. And everyone who attends a focus group are going to get a whole whack load of seeds from West Coast Seeds delivered to your school. So heads up, those are.
Yeah, and just maybe just to add a little bit to this too, is that with the survey that we're going to send out to basically anyone who signed up for these workshops, and so that's just trying to gather any sort of impressions that they had. We will be gathering that information and kind of working our way through it and using that to help guide our conversations in these focus groups. And so for the focus groups, we're looking for people who, for the most part, attended a few different sessions. But I mean, if you feel like you attended 1 or 2 and have pretty good understanding of the program, we also welcome you to reach out. But we're looking to sit down and just have a conversation and ask really pointed questions, kind of like, what did you think about breakout rooms? And what did you think about this? How do you have ideas of how we could maybe improve upon that so that we can kind of set back to the drawing board and get it ready for next year, so it can even be that much better for teachers in the future.
So as always, please reach out if you need any support from any of us. These are our wonderful, capable animators all across the province. And yeah, we hope you have a wonderful winter, and please reach out. We will be emailing you, so don't think you're going anywhere. And we can do a quick reflection, right, Marcus?
Yes, I give it the green light.
What everybody talked about. All right, great. So who should we do first? Garden or committee? Or does anybody want to do like an impromptu reporting out? And then we can just do your group first. I didn't go into any of them, so I can't.
What was it? Patty was asking about the the committee group, right? The reflection kind of committee. Yeah, Sonia, do you want to maybe just give a couple highlights from what we heard, in the group?
Yeah, it is tricky with a short amount of time to like have that deep reflection. But what we kind of started with were some barriers, like what was challenging for one particular person, and kind of like what ways that other people had incentivized members to commit or to even show up. And a few pieces that like were takeaways that I recall are, one was like, make meetings during school hours, not after school. So somehow do it over lunch, or get like that coordinated time during like a supervision to meet up to do it. Another one was, if it's available, like offer incentives to teachers, and maybe those incentives can be seeds that are somehow donated or contributed, or maybe the incentive is like buddy learning, so like buddying up with another class, so there's opportunities for that teacher to feel like relief from that, perhaps like when all the students are engaged together. And or just feeling like you can get a preschool and up to grade 8 classes engaged in it fully and wholeheartedly with dedication and passion. It's also a way to engage other committee members. It's just your passion and fervor. I don't know if that sums it up for folks who are in the committee group, but there's challenges, and I think sometimes the perseverance is really important. And at times you can be weighed with a culture of like the school culture that may just not naturally be attracted to a garden project. So sometimes you just have to persevere.
And for the garden group, do we have any high level notes to report out there?
I'm happy to report on some of the conversations that were had. We heard some great stories about what people are up to as they winterize their garden, and also into a good discussion about kind of scaling back on some of our winterizing methods to let the garden naturally go through the seasons, and the learning opportunities that happen. We can watch decomposition happen in the garden, watch different animals find habitat in the winter, kind of relics that are left behind at the end of the growing season. So it's an interesting conversation about kind of the pros and cons of how much do we tidy up the garden in the winter. I think Addie, kind of linking back to your point about covering the ground, whether you're covering it with mulch you bring in or just letting the things die down and cover the soil, keeping the soil covered is just so important. We also had a few inspiring people talk about a large greenhouse, which is such a great way to extend the season. And then also seed libraries, and that's a really popular activity right now as gardens are collecting seeds and sharing them out. And I did just click on Nicole, your seed library. I just followed your link you put in. Wow, you guys have so many seeds posted. If you haven't clicked on the link that Nicole put in the chat bar, it's really inspiring to think about.
I'm very motivated to avoid my marking.
Well, it looks amazing. So yeah, great discussion. I don't know if anyone else in the garden group wants to share some of the highlights as well.
No, I think that was awesome how you highlighted there. And I just wanted to add that the excitement of that possibility of leaving things in the garden, also just like all the experimentation experience that can go along with that, like what happens to the tissue of the plants when frost hits them, kind of like what we mentioned there. And then also, in addition to, there are plants that you can just let grow up and then leave hanging out, which we kind of spoke to, but like kale or Brussels sprouts that you can let the snow cover and then have the kids experience the fact that they can hang out, and sometimes they taste even better after that's happened. So that's the potential there.
Sounds so awesome. Thank you for those. That was really nice to hear. Yeah, Nicole, these are amazing. So many things. 35 pages of them. Incredible. I would like to give a little bit of shout out to Marcus. He is not going to be hosting these next year. So thank you, Marcus. You have been awesome to work with. And I hope you have all enjoyed Marcus's stories and Mr. Broccoli, over these last 10 months. So thank you, Marcus.
I put in the chat there, but maybe the next time I see you might be at our conference that we're going to be hosting next year at UBC. So we just sent out the save the date for this. It's kind of the first ever, but it's kind of on the heels of the one we hosted 2019 in partnership with Farm to Cafeteria Canada. So yeah, you'll hear some more news about that. Sign up to our newsletters if not, but yeah, hope to be able to see you there. It's going to bring kind of people such as yourselves all together for 3 days, 1 day of field trips and 2 days of kind of proper conference sessions, that kind of thing.
Well, thank you, Marcus. Hope you're going to be doing something exciting.
I'm still going to be with the organization. I'm just, they booted me out of the webinar.
Oh.
Yeah, they said I talked too
Well,
much, so I got the boot.
Well, that's great.